What is going on, everybody? We have made it a day away from the NFL draft, and here I have my last video before the draft, as I'm going to be doing a predictive mock, mixing things up from my typical what I would do mock, really trying to give it my best shot at what I think actually happens here tomorrow night in the first round. I do want to remind you, I will be live right here on YouTube tomorrow night, Friday night, Saturday night, giving my live reactions and analysis to every single pick in the draft. I am so excited, man. It's always fun. It's always a celebration. Excited to see you all there. I also wanted to let you guys know my draft guide is available now and is going to be fully completed over the next 36 hours before the draft, obviously. Going to have 350 players or so fully graded, ranked, written up. When those players come off the board, you can see my full write-ups right there in the draft guide. I also have, if you want more mock drafts, I have eight 7-round mock draft videos up, one for each division. So all 32 teams have a 7-round mock draft. If you enjoy my draft content, if you want to show a little bit of support and love for the channel, and you want even more content, you can get all that on my Patreon at patreon.com/thatfranchiseguy. Lastly, if you could just hit that like button before you dive in here, really helps me out, takes just a second, and let's get started. So with the number 1 pick, it's going to be Bryce Young to the Carolina Panthers. Really happy that I stood by this when all the CJ Stroud stuff was going on. I just have always seen a tier gap between Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and I think, this is very much clearly going to be the pick here Thursday night, and I think the Panthers have had time to really sit this thing out and look at this, and they feel the same way, in that Bryce Young is going to be the guy that can sprinkle a little magic into that organization after they gave up all of those assets to move up. But then things get very interesting with the number 2 pick here with the Houston Texans, because it's really starting to feel like they think kind of like I think, and not that these are bad quarterback prospects, but that you're not getting that, step in and completely overhaul the organization type of player like Bryce Young is. And yeah, they could stay put. They could take Levis. They could take CJ Stroud, of course. They could take Anthony Richardson. And I think they'd all be fine picks, but I don't think that's the direction they're going to go. You have a brand new regime coming in, a defensive head coach in DeMeco Ryans, who played at the University of Alabama, and you have the best pick for this organization in Will Anderson from Alabama, who's a scheme fit for DeMeco Ryans, sitting right there. I really have a hard time seeing them passing that up for a quarterback that I think they feel, like I feel, they're going to have another opportunity either in this draft or in a future draft to get a quarterback of similar caliber. I think they stay put. They take Will Anderson. I don't think they take Tyree Wilson, despite the gambling odds hinting that they might. I could see them going Tyree Wilson as well for sure. But I think the Alabama connection there is going to be a little bit too strong. DeMeco's going to have his words to say about this. And then, we'll see. Maybe they climb back up from that 12th pick for one of these quarterbacks. Maybe they don't. I think that's very much going to be in play for them. They're going to be monitoring how this goes. But I think at number 2, the pick is going to be Will Anderson. And then it gets even more interesting with Arizona at number 3. They have landed on this pot of gold. You have these 3 good quarterback prospects in your lap, and you get to kind of make phone calls around the league and see what you can get for this pick. And with Will Anderson gone, I think you really want to get out of this pick and milk some value from it. And I just don't know how strong those offers are going to be. I think there will be teams interested. I think Tennessee might be on the phone, especially you've got the new GM in Arizona, just came from Tennessee. But I don't know if Tennessee is going to quite offer enough to Arizona for them to really want to move down to 11. I think the more realistic situation here is actually with Indianapolis at number 4. We've seen this in the past. The Bears moved from 3 to 2 to jump up and take Mitch Trubisky, and the fans always say, you don't have to do this. They're not going to take your quarterback at number 3. Yeah, but someone else might jump up and do that. So for me, I think the Colts are going to be very much in on CJ Stroud. I really do think he's got the floor. He's got enough upside. They are so desperate to hit at this pick. I think he is going to be the safest option for them. And for them to really only have to give up either a third-round pick this year or maybe a conditional second or something that's not too bad to ensure that they get this guy, I think they're willing to do this. So I think we see this. Arizona milks the clock down. It's Indianapolis at the last second, and the Colts jump up and take C.J. Stroud. And then Arizona sitting at number 4. You could continue to shop this pick. There's still 2 more quarterbacks there, and maybe this is a trade-up situation for a team like Tennessee now. But for me, I'm going to stay put and make project them to make this pick. I think a double trade down is we just don't see that. I don't know if teams have enough time to fully execute a double trade down. The wheeling and dealing there is a lot, but I think the Cardinals are going to stay put, and I think they go Tyree Wilson here. I really struggled with this though, because I would not be the least bit surprised if the pick was Devon Witherspoon. We just don't know what this new regime with Gannon and the new GM coming in, how they're going to really perceive that whole pass rush versus coverage debate. Really, most of the teams in the NFL are going to value pass rush. And while I see Witherspoon as a massive his grade is a good chunk over Tyree Wilson, the NFL doesn't seem to feel that way about Tyree Wilson. In fact, he's currently the gambling favorite to be the number 2 pick. So for me, I'm gonna if I'm betting on what this pick is going to be in this situation, I think they go defensive line and a pocket pusher to build around. But I am 50-50 on this one. It's either going to be Tyree Wilson or Devon Witherspoon for the Cardinals, either at 3 or 4. Then we got the Seahawks up at number 5, and with Wilson and Anderson gone, it's a pretty easy decision to take Jalen Carter. I think he plugs right into that defensive line. I do think Seattle is an environment and a culture established there where they can really bring him in, make sure he's got his ducks in a row from a character, work ethic perspective, and really set him up for massive success in Seattle and turn him into one of the best players, if not the best player from this draft. Before we get to Detroit at number 6, with the draft ramping up here, now is the best time to sign up at Underdog Fantasy, where you can participate in their best ball drafts. These are set it and forget it drafts. If you're like me and you're in, 6 fantasy leagues and you can't get enough fantasy, but you just don't have the time to set your lineups, make the weekly transactions in all of these leagues, best ball's gonna be for you, man. You do your draft, and then every week it's going to plug in your best possible lineups. No weekly transactions, no setting your lineups. So you can put your football IQ to the test if you want to get in if you've been consuming draft content and you know all about these rookies and you think you have a step ahead of the competition that maybe hasn't put all this time into these rookies, you can come in and have that knowledge about these rookies and have an advantage here doing your full fantasy drafts here in the month of May. So that's at Underdog Fantasy. If you sign up now using promo code TFG, you'll support my channel, and they will match up to $100 on your first deposit. You can compete in individual leagues like your friends' leagues at home, or you can get in these massive contests that pay out millions and millions of dollars in winnings every year. So that is promo code TFG at Underdog Fantasy. So Detroit, I've been very clear that the best pick for this organization is Anthony Richardson, and I will die on that hill. But if you read the tea leaves, they seem to be pretty out on whether it's the player themselves or the concept of drafting a quarterback here. They want to stand by Jared Goff and try to put a championship team around him in this horrible NFC right now and really go for it. So for me, I think they take Devon Witherspoon here. He's a scheme fit. We know that coming from that Saints staff, they, at their heart of hearts, want to go press man coverage. They haven't always had the bodies to do it. But after they traded away Jeff Okudah, there is a clear opportunity for Witherspoon, who to me is a blue chip player in this draft, along with Bijan Robinson and Will Anderson, to get him at 6, is exceptional value and at a premium position. Pretty self-explanatory if you're not taking a quarterback here. But at number 7 for the Raiders, I am going to take a quarterback. This is where Will Levis is going to come off the board. And I think, with Witherspoon gone, with Anderson gone, even with Tyree Wilson gone, I think this becomes a little bit easier to swallow as far as like the defensive talent coming off the board. But it really does make sense for their window, man. You've got Jimmy G as your clear bridge quarterback. He's on a bridge quarterback contract. You can bring in Will Levis and let him get acclimated to this system that it's McDaniel's offense has a lot of reads. It's got a lot of option routes down the field. It's going to take time for Levis to get up to speed. It could take a whole year. I think any quarterback benefits from a year to sit. And in that time, maybe the Raiders can solidify a dominant offensive line in front of them. I think they have an exceptional group of receivers there to work with, obviously with Davante Adams. And let's face it, Jimmy Garoppolo has not been the best model of health. I think Will Levis is pro-ready, but would benefit from 7 to 10 weeks as a backup. If something happens to Jimmy G, maybe the Raiders are actually having a decent season. They were a little bit underrated last year by the end of it all. You could put in Levis and maybe you get really excited heading into year 3 of the McDaniels era. I think if Levis or even if it's Anthony Richardson here, either one could make a lot of sense. But for me, Levis is the fit for McDaniels offense. And we'll move on to the 8th pick with the Atlanta Falcons. You guys, I really think the Falcons are going to want Bijan Robinson. I just do. I look at Arthur Smith, the run game. They have so consistently now thought best player available with this new regime. Going back to when they took Kyle Pitts, it reminds me a lot of that. And I think they want to see what Desmond Ridder can do. That in my heart of hearts, I think they believe in Desmond Ridder. Do I? No, I would for sure take Anthony Richardson here. It's a no freaking brainer. But I do think they're smart enough to potentially trade down here with the team that Arthur Smith came from in the Tennessee Titans, who I think are going to want Anthony Richardson. So we're going to make this move. The Falcons are going to move down to 11, targeting Bijan Robinson. If they don't go Bijan, I think there are other excellent options for them. But I think they're going to move down. I think Tennessee is going to really be making phone calls to move up. I don't know if it's going to be all the way up to 2 or 3, but with either Levis or Anthony Richardson, if they're there at 7 and 8, I think those are trade down opportunities for the Titans. This is the one that made sense for me. So we're going to come up with the Titans to take Anthony Richardson, who gets a year behind Ryan Tannehill. They have a path. You don't have to give up too much. You're not giving up a future first at this point. It's going to be some handful of day 2 picks. Pardon the alarm there. But yeah, it makes sense to me for Tennessee. For Atlanta, we'll talk about this when we get to the 11th pick. With the 9th pick, the Bears, Paris Johnson. I have a gut feeling that Paris Johnson just might go a lot earlier than we think, like maybe Arizona at 4 type of early. I think he's a phenomenal tackle prospect. I genuinely think he's one of the 5 most valuable players in this draft. If the Bears had to stay put and make a pick at number 1, I think he could be the pick for them at number 1. So for them to move down, get DJ Moore, it's a first round pick next year. It is definitely a no-brainer for them. I will sneak this in our last draft video. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Justin Fields versus Bryce Young, because I had that take very early on in the process, and I still will be surprised if Justin Fields ends up significantly better than what I feel about Bryce Young, and that's more of a testament to how I feel about Bryce Young. But let's carry on, and I just pissed off Bears fans for no reason, but it's a take that I feel pretty strongly about. We'll see how it plays out. The Eagles at number 10, they're pissed. I think the Eagles really want Paris Johnson, and they're a team that they could move up with Arizona at 4 or 3 and take Paris Johnson. I would not be stunned, but I still think they're going to stick with that thought process and take Peter Skoronski at number 10. This is just what the Eagles do, and I think they're thinking about Bijan Robinson here, but I don't think Howie can bring himself to draft a running back number 10 as good as he is. I would probably take Bijan here. I think he would be a special difference maker and would love the pick if the Eagles did it, but you look at that right guard spot, and Peter Skoronski could plug right in and be an all-pro guard right away. He really could. To me, it's very similar to what Zach Martin did coming from Notre Dame as a top 10 pick, plugged right in for the Dallas Cowboys. And even if Lane Johnson surprisingly hangs up the cleats next year at 34 years old, you have a backup plan of a guy that could kick out to tackle as well. So he definitely plugs in, makes just as much sense to me as Paris Johnson, even if I don't think he has the upside. But he's probably a better guard right away, and that's honestly probably the biggest need on the Eagles roster anyway. So Skoronski at 10, and then the Falcons are going to take Bijan at 11. Again, I just have a gut feeling. I can see it with Arthur Smith having Derrick Henry, how much he's going to want that run game to be truly special. I think Bijan is going to be a special player. You're talking about a guy that could step in and have a 2,000-yard season as a rookie with how much they're going to lean on him, how much they're going to do with that wide zone run scheme. Arthur Smith understands the run game at a Kyle Shanahan level. He really does. And I think he looks at a guy with this vision, this explosiveness, a guy that's this consistent at making that first guy miss. He thinks this could be a top 5 offense in the NFL this year with Bijan Robinson. Is he crazy for thinking that? Maybe, but to me, this is going to be their target, and to trade down and still get him, I think is even better. At number 12, the Houston Texans. I struggled with this one. Again, I think they could be looking to move up and target like an Anthony Richardson, but they definitely don't have to do that. They, I think, are more than comfortable to kind of sit back, watch this thing play out, and make this pick at 12. And I really struggled with who they would take here. I thought about Lucas Van Ness and just going with a crazy combination of pass rushers. I don't think they would quite go that route. I think the pick would be Jackson Smith and Jigba here. Looking at that wide receiver room, it really does need help, especially in the short to intermediate part of the field. You have Dalton Schultz there. You have Amari Rodgers. Like maybe John Mechie can make an impact as a slot, but you look at the quick separation ability of Jackson Smith and Jigba, kind of how he's perceived around the league. I don't know if I would make this pick myself, but I do see this happening and being a fit in Houston. Then in Green Bay, now with the 13th pick, I do want to take a second and just, people have been wanting my opinion on the Aaron Rodgers trade. They've been wanting me to give Brian Gutekunst credit, and I'll give him some credit. He waited this thing out. I think he got fair value for Aaron Rodgers. I think he didn't get fleeced. So if you want me to give Brian Gutekunst credit for getting fair value for a 2-time MVP in the last 3 years, I guess I will. We'll see what he does with this 13th pick before I give him too much credit, because if this pick is Keon White, I am going to lose my absolute shit on stream. I like to think 13 is too high for Keon White, but he is a Packers guy through and through, and I am still terrified that they're going to take Keon White at 13. But I think for the Packers, this is very close to the trade that I had projected. I had said a pick swap here, you get the second round pick and a conditional pick plus Corey Davis is what I was saying. The difference is no Corey Davis, but that conditional pick has a much higher chance of being a first round pick than I had originally anticipated. I said basically if he plays next year, it would be a second. If they win a Super Bowl this year, it'd be a first. If they win a Super Bowl next year, it'd be a first in 2025 or team success. It wasn't necessarily Super Bowl. I think I was saying conference championship. But either way, the conditional pick, a better chance of being a first next year, but no Corey Davis in the trade that I thought would have been a big win for Green Bay given their wide receiver needs. So I think it was a fair trade. I think from the Jets, they gave what they needed to do to make themselves an instant Super Bowl contender. I really do feel that way about them. And for the Packers, good job getting fair value, and now you're picking at 13. So what do I think they do here? I think they take Nolan Smith. We know Brian Gutekunst's infatuation with color-coding the Georgia G into green and gold. He's done it 2 years in a row now. I think he makes it 3 years in a row. They value that edge position at an immense level. This is very reminiscent of when they took Rashawn Gary, despite having 2 starters in place. Gary is coming off the ACL. They don't know how full speed he's going to be. Preston Smith getting up there in age. I think they typically want bigger-bodied edge guys, but I think Nolan Smith will clear a lot of their athletic profiles and is a nice kind of lightning to Rashawn Gary's thunder. He's also a great leader who can keep not just Quay Walker mentally in check, but the other Georgia player they took last year, they took 2 last year, in in Devontae Wyatt, who had reported off-field issues. Nolan Smith can kind of, be that locker room leader for that front seven in a huge way. So I think they're going to really appreciate him. I think that's a reason they wanted to kind of come up and try to make it their best chance at getting Nolan Smith. So that's what I predict they do. But they could go in any variety of directions with O-line, safety, like Brian Branch could be in play, or even receiver. I don't know. That'd be super ironic. But there's your Packers analysis. Let's move on to the New England Patriots at 14. Tough pick to kind of sit here and make. I definitely could see them going Broderick Jones. I thought about that, but I think Bill Belichick's going to fall in love with Lucas Van Ness and what he can do for that defense. The New England Patriots, I believe, were second in the NFL in the percentage of games run up front with their pass rush, talking about loops and stunts. And you now pair Josh Uche, who is one of the bendiest, quickest pass rushers in the league. He can win one-on-one, but what he can do as a bendy, looping pass rusher on those stunts is remarkable. You put Lucas Van Ness, who can line up as a 4-eye. He can line up as a 7 technique, come in and crash the offensive line and have a looper come around the other side. He is going to be a true chess piece for Bill Belichick to scheme up front. He can come in and defend the run on early downs. They've always been willing to play a lighter inside defensive end player. Goes back to doing it with Flowers, right, who went to Detroit. Can't think of his first name, but they also are still doing it on the edge with Dietrich Wise. Lucas Van Ness is just a vamped up version of that player. So from a scheme fit perspective, and then of course you got Barmore, who's an underrated player, and you have Matthew Judon. So like this, seriously, I don't think people realize how incredible this pass rush could be. I think this could seriously compete with the 49ers for the best pass rush in the NFL. And I obviously do not say that lightly. And that has never been a huge staple of a Belichick defense is the pass rush. But with how much they unlocked their loops and stunts last year, I think this is a new iteration of Belichick's defense. And he's always constantly evolving like this. And I think this is going to be his kind of zig while the league is zagging type of, idea, if you will, if that makes sense. So we're going to put Lucas Van Ness here with the Patriots at 14. Then we got the Jets up at 15, and I think this is where Broderick Jones comes off the board. I think he could play either guard or tackle for them right away. I think he's a long-term left tackle and the eventual Dwayne Brown replacement. But they need someone that can kind of fill into that offensive line. With Skoronski off the board, this is going to be your fit there. To me, it just seems a little early for a guy like Darnell Wright. We'll kind of see what the league views about him. Because I originally thought about Darnell Wright as a better player now than Broderick Jones, but I just think the upside and scheme fit as well, being a wide zone team, was more important to go with Broderick here. Then the Washington Commanders, Christian Gonzalez just falls into your lap. I mean, this is an incredible fit, a zone-heavy defense in Washington, a cornerback-heavy, cornerback-needy defense in Washington. The board just kind of played out this way, and you run this pick up to the podium if you're the Commanders. And then the Pittsburgh Steelers at 17. I'm going to go with the pick we've been making since January. I really think Joey Porter makes so much sense. You've got the father-son connection. But beyond that, he's just a really good fit for what they want to do. You look at the corners that they've had, Joe Hayden, Ahkello Witherspoon, like all these guys that have come through here. Even the guy they tried to get in William Jackson that just didn't work out. You've got these lanky press man corners. At their heart of hearts, Blitzburg defense, they want to bring the heat, and they want a guy in the back end that can hold up. And even if Joey Porter's a little bit grabby, he can follow a team's number one wide receiver, mug him at the line of scrimmage, and shut him down in time for that pass rush to get home. So I really think he's going to fit what they need to do. And then the fact that he's also the best player available. I actually think Deonte Banks is a slightly better prospect, but it's neck and neck. But I think with how dominant Porter is for their system, it just makes even more sense. So lock it in. And then Detroit at 18. After not getting a pass rusher with that 6th pick, I think you have to think about that here at 18. Now, I actually originally had Quentin Johnston, which I think could make a lot of sense for this team. But I am ultimately going to go Brian Brzee. Feels like a guy Dan Campbell would fall in love with. You know, Dan Campbell is he's a tough dude, but he's a romantic. And I think he looks at Brian Brezee's upside and the story with what happened with his daughter, and a guy that has really persevered through his college career. I really think not only on the field is he a fit as a 3-tech in that defense next to Aleem McNeil, but just, you know, from a character perspective, I really think they're going to fall in love with this guy. So I could definitely see this one happening. Then Tampa at 19, that tackle need is so strong. These edge players are flying off the board. I think Miles Murphy might be in play for them, but I'm going to take Darnell Wright. You know, I think you have the flexibility between Wright, who played left tackle. He's been insistent that he can play left tackle. You can probably start him at left, but they've also said, you know, Tristan Wirfs could be a left tackle as well. So, you know, honestly, not a horrible comparison is the left tackle that Tampa had. What was his freaking name that they let go? Donovan Smith. You know, similar kind of big-bodied, good, not great athlete at left tackle. Kind of plug and play there. Then the Seahawks at pick 20. This is an interesting one. They could go in a variety of different directions. I think Miles Murphy could be in play for them here as well, but I'm going to go with Quentin Johnston. I can really picture him in Seattle. Out the gate, I really think he's going to be a good impact for that offense. When they go to 11 personnel, you know, he gives them something that they don't really have, and that's a big-bodied physical presence in the short to intermediate game. You know, DK is huge, but he's out there running posts and, you know, deep balls. Like he is out on the perimeter winning deep. Tyler Lockett's working everywhere, but Quentin Johnston as a design touch guy, as a crossing route guy, slants, digs, hitches, like he is going to be a huge playmaker for Geno Smith in this offense, and I think he just makes a ton of sense. And I can just picture him there next to DK Metcalf. This is like the frickin' 2011 Chicago Bears or whatever it was when they had Martellus Bennett, Brandon Marshall, and Alshon Jeffrey, like just the team that gets off the bus and puts the fear of God in you. You better have big corners if you're going against the Seattle Seahawks. And hopefully Quentin Johnston can learn how to get some better ball skills from, you know, guys like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Then at 21, the LA Chargers. I think Brian Branch makes a ton of sense for them, especially if Bijan's not there. You look at that safety room. Safety is a critical position in a Brandon Staley, Vic Fangio defense that's going to run a lot of quarters. They lose Nasir Adderley, retired. You ain't rolling Alohi Gilman out there at safety, LA. And this is not a good safety class. So to me, Brian Branch, coming from a similar style defense at Alabama, is going to understand all of these rules and really be an upgrade for what Nasir Adderley was on the back end as that hybrid split safety type of dude. I know they drafted JT Woods last year. You can run 3 safety packages with Derwin James down in the star role. That might be the best case scenario is if JT Woods works out, but he was remarkably raw. Doesn't look like he's poised to be a starter right away this year. That was always a risky pick to begin with. So to me, I definitely see them going with Brian Branch. Then at 22, Deonte Banks falls right into the Baltimore Ravens' lap. I think he's a huge missing piece. If they bring him in, that defense is really complete. Hopefully Lamar can come back. You can work out a situation where he's playing for you next year. They brought in some wide receivers. This team could really turn this thing back around in a hurry. Winning cures all wounds. I think Lamar could play well here and earn the contract he deserves. I mean, he has earned it, let's be clear, but convince the Ravens to give him this contract with a great defense. Deonte Banks is such a stud, such a perfect fit. To get him at 22 is a massive steal. He is, I want to say, the 9th overall player on my personal big board. 8th, actually. So, yep, A+ pick for the Ravens. And then the Vikings at 23, this is horrible. Like, you are looking at that like, oh my God, they took our guy. And that's usually when trade downs happen. And the Vikings are already a trade down candidate. They did it twice last year. They don't have a second round pick. They don't have a third round pick next year. They want to recoup some picks from the TJ Hawkinson trade. Them flipping with the New Orleans Saints, who Saints fans have been adamant, like, look, they're going to move up. They always move up. It really makes sense. I think this actually is like a pretty easy trade up prediction that the Saints come up. They take Myles Murphy, who plugs right into that defensive line, a huge need, fits their size profiles. I think by NFL standards, starting to slip a little bit here. They're going to come up, get their defensive end, and the Vikings are going to move down and probably get a player from the same pool of guys that they'd be thinking about taking here at 23, which we'll see in a minute. But then at 24, I think this is going to be my first surprise pick here. The Jags kind of beat to their own drum, with Trent Baalke. They're also a team that doesn't have a lot of glaring needs. I think Brian Branch, if he's there, would be easy. But I'm going to make a surprise pick here and have them go with Adetomiwa Adebawore. We saw them take Trayvon Walker #1 last year, and I look at that defensive front. They have room for a player like this as a 4-eye technique. Someone that can run games with Trayvon Walker, can eat up some snaps as a 5 technique on early downs if they want to play certain 4-man fronts. To me, this is a little bit of a hot take prediction, but if you look at what Trent Baalke values, I don't think it's insane. I think Elijah Cansey would be in play, but I don't know if Trent Baalke, who passed on Aiden Hutchinson for Trayvon Walker last year, is going to all of a sudden change who he is and take a Elijah Cansey who has really bad arm length. Maybe they do, but we get surprise picks in this range every year. It's not a huge reach. I think, Adebawore is a top 40 player for me, so I like this pick, to be clear, but it would be a surprise on draft night. The Giants at 25, I don't think this would be much of a surprise. Them going with John Michael Schmitz. They've been connected. I've been mocking them before they were connected. I was mocking them to take John Michael Schmitz. Center, he is just a cut and paste, Big Ten to the NFL, day one starter. I don't feel like I need to explain too much more about this other than that regime really values offensive line. It's not a great interior class. They can get an easy starter here at 25. 26, the Dallas Cowboys. So I've been mocking them, Mazi Smith, and I still think they could do that here. They do like Michigan defensive players. But I do hear you, Cowboys fans, that they're going to go offense here. And I think you're probably right. And Dalton Kincaid is still there. I think he would make sense. And I think Dak, being such a surgeon in the short to intermediate field, could have a really good chemistry with a Dalton Kincaid right away. So I definitely could see this being the pick here. I like Jake Ferguson. I've always been a Jake Ferguson guy. It's kind of disappointing that he's going to get passed up here, but it's for a talent like Dalton Kincaid. I can justify it. Then at 27, the Buffalo Bills. Another situation where I hear you, Bills fans, and I agree with you that linebacker is going to be in play for the Bills. But in these what I would do mock draft situations, I think it's fucking stupid to draft a linebacker in the first round. I just do. Now, if a team's going to do it, it probably would be the Buffalo Bills, who really do place a premium on that position. They decided that Tremaine Edmunds was a little bit too expensive for them. They let him out the door. I see a similar type of prospect in Drew Sanders. I think that would be the guy that they want to fill that role. So we're going to have them taking Drew Sanders because them sitting at the back of the second round, they know they're probably not going to get their hands on not just Drew Sanders, but probably not Jack Campbell or Diane Henley either. So we're going to go Drew Sanders to the Bills at 27. And then for the Bengals at 28, they're a team that I think is really going to like Elijah Cansey and what he can do for that defense. They have the freedom to go best player available, and Cansey is in this situation. I think the best remaining player on my board, and I think on their board as well, he will be. They have defensive tackles, Bengals fans, I know. I like BJ Hill a lot. I love DJ Reader. I've pounded the table for DJ Reader as one of the most underrated players in the league. So believe me, I get that. But neither of those guys are great pass rushers, especially in BJ Hill's case. You have a rotation here. You have a situation where Cansey can play 5-tech for them on early downs. He's going to, hold up against the run on the edge pretty well, honestly. And then you can slide him inside and really amp up that pass rush in a way that, I'm not going to say they need it. It's a very good pass rush, but I think they can become a great pass rush and really boost up everything on the back end with Kalijah Cansey here. It's a really phenomenal fit. I could definitely see this being the pick if he's still there. Then the Vikes, after they move down, thinking about a corner here for sure. I think Tyreek Stevenson could be the pick here, but I think they're going to stick best player available and take Zay Flowers. They do need wide receiver. They let Adam Thielen go, and opposite of Justin Jefferson right now, it's KJ Osborne, who's fine, and then nothing else. I mean, Zay Flowers makes a ton of sense with that group. He can play from the slot. He can be a vertical threat on the outside. Really makes sense in this offense. And to move down and get him at 29, you're sitting very pretty here from Kwesi and the Vikings staff. Then the Eagles at 30. I struggled immensely trying to predict this pick. I thought about Keon White fitting kind of what they look for. Could be a 3-tech on pass rush downs. Certainly could be the pick. I think somebody in this draft is going to really like Keon White and probably overdraft him. I can't see that being Howie Roseman. I have too much respect for Howie Roseman to see him spending a pick on a bad 24-year-old pass rusher who didn't even test as well as he was supposed to, given that athleticism is his, calling card. Keon White in the first round is one of the most puzzling consensus projections I can remember. I mean, way more puzzling than Trayvon Walker, who was at least 21 and played at Georgia. And, right, like, I just don't get it. I think he's a third-round prospect. He's a dart throw. He's maybe like what Josh Sweat was for the Eagles. Maybe, but Josh Sweat was 21. So he's at the draft, Keon White is. He's going to go somewhere in the top 40 picks. I just don't think Howie is going to be the guy that takes him. I have too much respect for Howie Roseman. But at the same time, I looked at the other best players available, and I was like, okay, well, they say he doesn't value corner. Is he going to reach on a corner here? Because I think all the corners are a reach for them. Is he going to reach on a safety? No, he's not going to do that. He's not going to reach on a linebacker. I don't think there's a defensive lineman worth the pick here. I don't think you need Mazi Smith after you have Jordan Davis. I look at the offensive line. We already took Peter Skoronski at pick 10. I look at wide receiver. There's not a wide receiver worth it here. You're not drafting a tight end. You're not drafting a quarterback. What position group is left, guys? Running back. So with that, with the way the board is fallen, I'm going to take Jahmyr Gibbs. The only other player I thought maybe was Josh Downs out of North Carolina. Could be a really explosive slot player for them. But I think Jahmyr Gibbs is a bigger impact on this team. You get a very nice running back contract for the next 4 to 5 years. I think they would smartly let him go after producing at insane levels. And his explosiveness now, as a part of this running game, is starting to get pretty damn nasty because he's going to have a lot of space in this offense. It could be really scary. So I think he's thinking already about a running back at 10 with Bijan, so he's going to be on this thought process. Gibbs at 30, with this draft class being a little bit weaker, and with the ways I described, Howie Roseman takes a running back in the first round. Your alternative is Keon White, Eagles fans, so you tell me what you want him to do. Okay, Kansas City at pick 31. Anton Harrison is still there, and I think that's the pick. They need a tackle. Best-ish player available there at a position of value, just kind of falling into their lap. And, I don't think a horrible pro comp for Anton Harrison is what the tackle that the Chiefs just signed. Oh, my God. What's his name? Jawan Taylor. I don't think it's a bad pro comp for Anton Harrison, where he starts off a little bit rocky, play strength a little bit lacking early on, and then comes in and turns into a $20 million tackle ultimately. So really good pick for the Chiefs. Really like this mock draft. I do. I think it's predictive, but good picks for everybody, sound picks. I can't wait for 3 of these picks to end up being correct and everybody to roast me, but that's why I do what I would do mock drafts most of the time. But I really hope you guys enjoyed. Please do hit that like button if you did. I appreciate you for watching. We'll see you draft weekend here. It's going to be a ton of fun. Take out your phone, set a reminder to join me here on YouTube for the draft. That's all we got. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon. Peace out.